with, like, within our brains, like triggers in our brains that are activated with music, and how that's really truly community building. And I think people don't always realize that it's so much more than just the value of the notes or it sounds nice. It's something way deeper that we don't even yet understand.
Exactly. And that kinesthetics part of music, like the touch.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. I don't know a single musician who can truly sit still, right? You know, like you can see those wigglers and you're like, there's a musician right there, because they hear the music and they're all over it. You know, it's such a core part of who we are as humans.
Exactly.
So. And the fact that people who have dementia but can sing a song, every single word, but they don't remember their family's names, but they can sing a whole song from beginning to end.
I actually find that incredibly sad. Yeah, like I find that very, very sad that, you know, and I'm sure it's heartbreaking. Actually, a friend of mine whose father was a phenomenal musician in the London area, his dad had dementia, and I remember having this conversation with him, and I think he was actually a little bitter, like trying to deal with what was going on. He said just that. He was like, you put him in front of a choir, he can conduct it. He remembers every word. He remembers every note, but he can't remember me. And it drove him crazy because, you know, how I was like, oh, it's so sad, so sad. But yeah, like it's amazing. Actually, McMaster Music in the Mind, the work that they do with infants is even more fascinating, because it's all about how things develop.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's a thing that connects us across the world too, and across the ages.
Yes.
Always will be here. We had a team meeting last week, and somebody it was an icebreaker activity. It was like, would you rather activity, and one was, would you go back in time and visit your great grandparents, or would you go forward in time and visit your great grandchildren? So, like, you know, which one would you rather? But you know, you just think about, you know, if you went either way you went, there's always going to be music.
Yeah.
And so it would be interesting to see, you know, how that would always be present in everybody's lives.
My sister
we've got some other friends joining us already.
I was just going to say, my sister attended Music in the Mind conference at UCLA, and she said one of the more fascinating ones was this entire study, which they were looking at empathy and the brain, and they had all these people in the MRI machine, whatever, the thing that takes your pictures of your brain, and they showed pictures of different cultural backgrounds. And what they found was people instinctively were more empathetic towards people who looked like them until they heard music from different cultures. And then it didn't matter. It didn't matter. The music triggered this empathetic thing in their brain. So
brain
by listening to, I mean, like we always talk about listening to a diverse music, like music from different backgrounds, different cultures, but part of that actually is deep within our brains, where it offers us like a little gateway into empathy towards people who maybe don't look like us, don't dress like us, and seem visually different, but it seems to tap into something so much deeper.
Fascinating.
Oh, we could have a whole different conversation at another time.
So welcome, LKDSB educators that are joining us today. You have landed in the music learning session, and we have guests joining us today that will lead us through our learning. So thank you so much for being with us. It's just after 4:30, so we'll get going today. Let's start with our land acknowledgement. And of course, I don't have my words up and ready with me. I get too busy talking. Always the way. I know we really want to make sure we acknowledge the land that we are on learning from. And we have the great ability in our community to get out and explore lots of different land. And so I took some images there that show the land across our two counties, Kent and Lambton. So today we acknowledge that the Chippewa, Odawa, Potawatomi inhabited these lands at the time of the written treaties, these being Treaty 2, Treaty 7, Treaty 29. The indigenous nations known as the Anishbek and Lenape agreed through their ancestral languages to the mutual sharing of the land with obligations and responsibilities to the environment. Today, these responsibilities and obligations extend to all people. And today, welcome Lisa Snow and Jane Wamsley from the Ontario Music Educators Association. They have been with us already for 2 days, and this is our third and final session, but I think we've made a connection that we'll be able to connect virtually as we move through the rest of the term and even next year. They're going to share some great content today, focusing on that grade 6, 7, 8 landscape. Lisa's going to be sharing her reflections from her classroom experiences. And we're wondering about all the great resources that Jane and Lisa have shared with us. Yes, we will be sharing them with our LKDSB teachers. So we're gathering the information and recording the session, and they will be available for you at our blogspot part. So if you are interested in seeing the recording of this and other sessions and the resources that these ladies have shared with us and the organization has shared with us, you'll be able to find them at our blog. So that recording, we've got a quick turnaround on them. So if you go to YouTube, subscribe, LKDSB Zoom PD, you'll be able to find this recording of this session and the other sessions probably by tomorrow afternoon. So thank you for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Jane. I think you have.
Yeah, just for a moment.
Share with us.
Hopefully. And of course now, this is what I want to share. And it didn't pick it up. I'll try it again.
Yeah. Oh, it flashed there for a moment. And while you're doing that, just remember, participants, if you wish to throw something into the chat and connect with these ladies, or if you'd like to come on camera or off mic, on mic, you can pose your question to the group. And I know Lisa started off today. She had a question for Val already. Put Val on the spot.
That's great.
Intrigued, Val, Lisa was intrigued by what you're doing with cups in your classroom.
I must have missed that.
No, she's intrigued by what you're doing. She wants to connect with you.
Oh. For sure, we can chat.
Thanks for being here again.
Some of you have already heard about OMEA from us the last couple of days, so I'll just give you a couple of things. It's a 100-year-old organization in Ontario, and we're here to support classroom and music teachers. So there are all kinds of things that we do as well. We are working with the government. You can see we provide leadership. We speak on behalf of school music teachers with the provincial government. There's research that happens, and we do lots of recognition of good things that are happening through our province. And we have people from early childhood right through to university who attend our conferences and who are members of Ontario Music Educators Association. There are some things about why we'd love to have you as members. If you come to our conference, that is usually included your membership fee for the year, but there are lots of things that you do get, and you're going to get a little taste of them over these 3 days of resources that are for members only. We've been giving a few of those away, but there's lots more on our site as well. There's a public part of our website and lots of things for all to download and share. Oh, whoops, we have publications that you get if you're a member. And these are the kinds of activities that you will find on our website for full day kindergarten right up to grade 8.
Mm-hmm.
This is our scope and sequence. If you were with us before, you have seen it. It is part of the package from the first night as well. And it is the continuum of all of our fundamental concepts and elements right from grade 1, which you can see at the beginning here when they're introduced, right over to grade 8. And you notice when you're working in grade 6, 7, 8, there aren't as many new concepts, but that's because all of these continue from the time they're introduced. We work with them forever. For example, beat. And I'm sure Lisa will attest, we never stop working with beat and trying to get us together. And as we've learned being online, that has been one of the casualties when you're online. So it goes through all of the whole curriculum is there on 2 pages for you to look at that continuum. So I hope that you'll have a look and use it in your planning.
Yeah, Jane, can you go back a couple of slides to the one that has all the squares on it?
Yes, maybe.
Squares. Yeah, this one here. So just looking at that, I think, yes, the yesterday's session, there were some questions about the French language piece. Can you just address that content area?
There are several what we call Blackline Masters that go with our big resources. These were written with ministry money, so they are on the front side of our website. And several of those, the pages that students would be engaged with have been translated into French. That was one of our projects. We also, on the members only side, every year we have at our conference a workshop that is about teaching in French, teaching music in French. And those would be uploaded there as well. And we are continuing to, would love to have anything that people have that they have developed. We would love to post that. And we also have a Facebook page where you could go and ask. So you could type in a question. I'm looking for French resources and a particular part of the curriculum. And you might get some really great sharing of ideas there. So people have been really great. And we also have quite a bit on financial literacy. So that's interesting ones there as well. And the AgaCon, which we mentioned yesterday, some really strong units.
Amazing.
That's
Thank you.
good? Okay.
Yeah. And those those continuum things as well. I think it's comforting to know that, you know, from the grade 5 teacher, students are going to come to me with some skills. And my job and responsibility is to strengthen those skills. Like they're not really, you know, there's not a lot of new when you're in the junior intermediate grades, you're strengthening things. So
that's right. And adding to the complexity.
Yes.
So the hopefully the basic elements were introduced earlier for sure. And we have a conference every year. This year it's called Confluco with Fire, and it's in Niagara Falls. We hope. And everything, of course, is up in the air. But right now, even if it isn't there, there are commitments that it will be online. And there will be lots of workshops that you could participate online. And last year they stayed up for a number of days as well. So you could go in. I actually attended probably 30 different workshops, which I would never have been able to do in a face-to-face conference. But there's a lot of work goes into that, and Niagara Falls is such a fun place to go. And Absolutely. So we would love to have you there. And we just want to say that you are welcome to come into our organization, but we also offer as many things as we can that are free to the province from our members. So I will leave you with that. You will see our address on our website on many of the materials. So you can go right on there and check it out. Check our big website out. So thank you. And I want to give it to Lisa because she has so much exciting work to be done. So this is Lisa, a wonderful teacher in London.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So we're going to be talking about sort of grade 6, 7, and 8 music. And as you said, by this point, we like to assume that the kids have a really nice foundation, but we still need to prepare kids that maybe don't. The first thing I want to share with you is, well, let me just get my screen up and running, which I need to be able to do, which I don't have permission to do, Rod.
Oh, Rod has to release the controls.
Yeah. Rod, please give me
I'm on
permission.
it.
We were chatting ahead of time and talking about
We were too distracted.
No,
Yeah.
I had it set. I thought you should be good.
Oh yeah, now it's good. Now it's
There
good.
you go. I was hoping the chicken would have to fill in the time.
No chicken today. No chicken today. Okay. So, all right. One of the things that this will be available as a PDF with links. So, when I thought about what I might share, one of the things that first came to mind was the beginning of this school year, where I knew I had to go into my late junior and intermediate classes, no instruments. We are a string school, but because of the way the scheduling has happened and the use of the rooms, it was not feasible to use our string instruments. And I knew that I wanted to hook the kids, engage them, but we also didn't know what to expect. They had to stay at their desks. They had to stay sort of physically isolated, but find a way to connect. And I discovered this TikTok hand challenge. And I don't know if anyone else knows about it, but when I found this, I was like, this is it. And it was an amazing experience. I've done it actually all the way down to grade 5. I did try it with my grade 4s, but it was challenging for them. With my grade 6, 7s, and 8s especially, they really responded well. Only a handful, maybe 2 or 3 of my grade 8 girls were even familiar with this, so it was new for everybody. Anybody know the TikTok hands challenge?
I do now.
So I put this together so that here's a little video of what it kind of looks like. And this is sort of the fad that it was for, like, I don't know, a blip on TikTok's life. But, here we go. Oh, I need sound. I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
We've all been there before.
Let me start that again. Let me play that for you again. This is what it is. That's it in its simplest sense. But I also discovered that there's Visual Music has their YouTube channel, and they have this tutorial, and this is what we started to do. It took a couple classes for kids to figure out how to do it. It's broken down really nicely with this hands challenge, and now it's become one of those things that if we have a few extra minutes, we'll pop on the hands challenge. Kids can do it individually at their desks, but then we also started doing it where they could challenge a partner who was nearby. So they do it together to see who can keep up, and they go faster and faster, because the whole point is that you're supposed to do it with the group and everyone needs to finish together. So I'll share a little bit of it with you. I hope you'll try it. Well, this is the little intro. So I'm just going to pause it for a second. What it does is it breaks it down in its form, like each section, and it uses those little cartoon hands. For me, the biggest thing was when I learned it, I actually broke it down with slightly different language, because there's some points that your hand is going up and down, or your hand is going down and up, and it's not as clear. But we're going to try it. They break it down with simple rhythms. So again, that was a really nice introduction at the beginning of the year, almost like a refresher of basic note reading of eighth notes, quarter notes, rests, but it's done in a very friendly manner. As you can see, that's the rhythm. You're just banging your table. So this is the overview, but then they actually break it down. They break it down so that you can see the rhythm. They give you a chance to practice it sort of multiple times. Let's look at this one. This is the first section. So they don't give you the whole 4 beats. So clap one hand on the table. And then they add another beat. Put your hand on top. Clap, check. Hand on top. Hand on top. It's not hard. And I really like how they break it down by what's happening on each beat. But that's when I would say to kids, when it said clap, drop, I was like, clap, and then pat your hand on the table. And then when it says clap, drop, top, you clap your hands, you put your hand on the table, and then you put your other hand on top. And that's the one that snaps. So kind of breaking it down. Part B, you're actually going up, down. So, you know, you need to take a little bit of time to figure out the pattern. And then once they've broken down the different sections, then they put it together at that tempo, and then they put it together at a much faster tempo. And it took my kids just a little while to get to that point, but it was really engaging, and kids could do it at their desk. They didn't have to be in groups. But if you ever get to the point where they're really into it, you can do a video, a TikTok video of it to sort of, you know, come back to that. And then the other thing I spoke about musicators yesterday. I use musicators a lot with my upper classes because we get a lot of kids from different parts of the world who join our school. And some of them come from countries that don't have any music programs at all. So I really liked musicators because it sort of set them up for success. And we'll skip the video because we've already seen it. But basically, these are the rhythms from the video, and all you have to do is listen. And then ta, ti, ti. So sort of move them. I didn't pay close enough attention. I'm not even sure. And then you check them. And then with my older students, I liked this because even for my older students, they very quickly started to sort of get back into the groove of how to do rhythmic dictation. And we eventually, you know, use much more complicated rhythms, longer rhythms, and so on, that they could write down. This is also something you can use for homework. And there's a few other sort of exercises. This is a bigger one. This is the whole song, and I used it with pitch, which they can put together. It looks very small on this screen. This one is the bane of my existence, but the students have no trouble with it. Basically, you listen to it, and then you tap the rhythm. There's a bit of a delay there because, you know, I for some reason, I'm not very good at it. And then this is another one where you listen and there are no, that doesn't sound very enticing, but there's not a lot, there's nothing there, but you put the rhythm in. And this is the rhythm from the music, from the hand challenge.
Okay.
So this is sort of a little starting point for us at the beginning of the year, and it was really a really sort of wonderful way for us to start.
Yeah. Does this work well on an iPad? We have
the musicators?
Yes.
Yes. It works on iPads, it works on computers, works on Chromebooks, it works on our smartboard. Teachers, it's all free. Teachers need to register, but students don't need to register, and it doesn't collect their data. And if you weren't here yesterday, I'll just say this in case there are people who weren't here yesterday. When you assign it as homework, which means they have to do it on a Chromebook or a computer or an iPad, it sort of keeps track of how they did, how many times they had to try something. So you as a teacher have an assessment, you have this immediate information about how they were doing on a task.
That's good. And is this the tool that you used face-to-face and virtually?
Yeah, I started the year using this, and then I would also, so if I had, like when we were remote, I had like easy, regular, and challenging, because I had a wide range of students in my upper grades. And I even had tests, because if a student was not, if we had a rhythmic test and a student was absent, then they had to do it at home online. And then nobody sort of like, I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Yes, Jane.
I really noticed that this would be so great for your students at whatever level they're at, which is so hard in a music room most of the time, because we're trying to play together. But this would be an opportunity for you to differentiate where students are coming from. Some come to you maybe playing an instrument, or having experience in a church choir, whatever it happens to be. And for them, they can go through those levels pretty quickly. Well, the others, and the self-check I loved as well, that you were able, they could hear it back. So often we do rhythm or notes without the sound. So I was really, I went through this when Lisa showed it to me, and I think it's really great. I wish I had it.
Yeah, it's been amazing. So I started using it face to face, and really sort of step by step. Even with my older students, we would do it on the smartboard together. You know, we would do it beat by beat first, and then we would do who can do all 4 beats. And then we moved from that to them writing it down. And I had a worksheet that had the little boxes, so they could equate what they saw with what was on the paper. I have lots of students that don't need that. I have lots of students that I have complex rhythms for them, because they have a strong background. But being able to break it down and understand the platform as well, not just do the rhythms, but understand how this platform works. I was just this is not intermediate at all. I'm just wondering if I can show you. I'm wondering, so this is a sample one. So this is, if someone has done it for homework, it shows you each exercise that was done and how much time they spent on it. And here it says they did it, they had 5 mistakes, or and so you can see, you can see if they were eventually successful, or if they just kind of pushed it aside and didn't do it. So and it's melodic as well as rhythmic dictation. So we don't really use the melodic in class right now, but when we were remote, I did have those as some of the options for the kids that were more inclined to try that kind of thing. Yes, I really love musicators. So that's the hands challenge. And if you're kind of wondering, where should I start with my music class? I say start there. It made me feel confident coming back into school in September. I was feeling really unsure of myself after everything that had happened, and that sort of gave my feet somewhere to stand.
Well, one of the things that music does is kind of help build that community, and do that through song, right? So this is like everybody's doing it together. I can imagine there were some cheers the first time.
Oh yeah,
the class did it.
yeah, and it's lots of fun. Like, and because I was not an expert at it, I think that also, the kids that were able to do it really fast before me, that I think that was like, I am wonderful. Miss Snow can't do it, but I can. So yeah, I think it's a great way just to start. And I always check back at that YouTube channel to see if they have any little nuggets. They have a few other things that I sometimes use with different classes, but they have like they create visuals for the music experience. So the next thing I want to talk about is Soundscapes, which are a great way to, oopsies, go through everything. So a soundscape is a great way to explore sound, explore a lot of the musical elements. And this one I actually developed when I first moved into the music classroom a few years ago after being in the classroom and unsure of what my students would know, unsure of their literacy skills, unsure of how they worked as musicians. And I wanted to have something that could give me that information. So, hold on. So I put this together, and it seems to be a little bit under the screen. I don't know if it's blocked by your screen.
No, I can see part 1.
Okay.
Is that what you're
So
clicking
I've
on?
sort of divided up part 1, 2, and 3, and 4. It's not really one lesson because or one period because I found it took more. And we first start by talking about notation. And oh, sorry, before I go any further, this I've broken it all down. I've put it into a document that will be accessible as well. Okay, so you don't need to take notes because they've been put there for you. So my first question that I ask my students is, what is notation? And there's probably some kids that have an idea, but a lot of kids are unsure. They know it's notes, or most of them have an idea that it's about notes. And we clearly define it. And the reason I want to define it is because of what this definition is, that it's a representation of musical sound with pictures and symbols. It's not tas and titis necessarily, right? It needs to be a general definition. And then we ask, what is standard notation, which is sort of the universally accepted or understood version of it. And then we talk about what is graphic notation. And most kids think it's about a graph, like a graph. But then they see its colors, its lines, its shape. And those things represent the music rather than the little notes that we're used to seeing. And then I give them an opportunity to sort of explore how they might interpret symbols to represent sound. Initially, kids are so reluctant to do this, where you say, what sound would you make if it had that symbol? But by the time you get further into these symbols, you have a cacophony. You have all sorts of sounds. And then there's actually one that's different colors. And you talk about what would that sound like if there are different colors? So often that's like one class because they spend a lot of time making noises. But we look at this. This is an example of a graphic score. And I ask kids, how would you interpret this? What do you think each symbol means? So a lot of kids start talking about what certain colors might mean. Maybe they're different instruments. Maybe they're different sounds. Maybe this is like a really loud sound. Maybe this is a quiet sound. Maybe these are snaps. They come up with lots of different ideas. But then we go here and we say, until we actually have a key or a legend, we don't know what the composer wants. And there are pieces where the graphic notation is left completely up to the performer's interpretation. But we want to teach the kids, you need a legend or key to tell everyone what the symbols mean. And then we kind of explore it. So that's part 1. And then we move into part 2, a quick little review. What is notation? Here are some examples. We've already discussed it. And then we talk about when we're creating, interpreting our notation, there's a few things to keep in mind. And one thing is that there needs to be some sort of connection between the shape and this color that you choose, or the shape that you choose, and the actual sound you want to create. And not just like the timbre or the quality of sound, but what kind of texture do you want it to have? How loud or soft? What is this going to represent? And it should have some sort of connection. It also, you encourage kids to visually represent the mood or emotional side of the music. And then you can also tell them, if there's a thing, an actual object that would represent this sound, you can use that as a symbol. And this is our opportunity to sort of play with how do you create using graphic notation. So if you've brought a piece of paper with you, we can try it. So the first question is, what sounds can you make with a newspaper? So what sounds can you make with a piece of paper? Have a moment to experiment there. And then, is anyone interested in sharing with us one of the sounds they made? Pam, your mic's off.
Yeah.
Pam, would you share with us one of the sounds you made and how you made it?
So I rolled my paper up and I'm plucking the tube, I guess.
Are you snapping your fingers on it like you're doing like a flick with your fingers?
Mhm.
Okay. What do you think we could draw to represent what you're doing?
Sounds like a marching step to me, almost like
So what do you want me to draw to represent your sound? Now the
like
kids.
a
Sorry, go ahead.
splat, like a.
Okay, some sort of splat,
Mhm.
or is that okay?
Yep.
So with the kids, some of them are really specific. Like sometimes they'll say, draw a column and fingers doing this. And other kids will say like, do this. So, and then we just start to make a legend. Flick, rolled paper. You need a lot of newspaper because you do one whole session where all you're doing is this kind
It's
of thing.
the this week's bulk burn flyer that has.
Anyone else have a sound they'd like to share? Jane, go ahead. What sound? Okay.
I'm rubbing the paper. So
Okay.
I would like you to make kind of a crazy spiral circle for rubbing the paper.
Like that kind of spiral? Or more circular? This looks like
That's
it's
fine. That's
Okay.
fine. Sure. Great.
rub.
It's very loud.
It is. Is there anyone else who would like to? Alicia? Is it Alicia?
Alicia rhymes with militia.
Oh, Alicia.
Yeah. So I shook mine and it makes a kind of like thunder sound, I
so
think.
what symbol?
I want a wavy line traveling upwards for no longer than 2 centimeters.
This is what you're getting. Okay. Yes, and some people are very specific about what they want, and I'm also very specific about saying you get what you get. Okay. Anyone else? Allison, did you want to share yours?
I just wave the paper like this, and then maybe the image could look the same as a little wave.
And can I make it go horizontal?
Sure, yes.
So you're making a softer wave than Alicia.
Yes.
So I will say vigorous wave for Alicia. Vigorous. Okay, so anyone else? Valerie, did you want to?
Here. You just do a horizontal line up and down like this.
Okay, do you want me to draw what your finger is doing on the paper?
Yeah, just like an arrow up and then an arrow down. Kind of like ukulele strums, you know?
So, and just sort of like rubbing your finger up and down on the paper?
Yep.
So I think Jane, you were rubbing your whole hand, weren't you?
Yes, I was all around it.
So, I mean, like, I've kept it really simple here, and I don't have to make it complex. So I have flick rolled paper, rub paper with hand, vigorous wavy paper, softer wave, rub finger. Sometimes this takes an entire class because everybody has a slightly different way of making the noise, and it's up to you how many people. But like kids rip paper, they smack the floor. It's very therapeutic. So once we've done this, we've made our key, then we are going to use all these symbols and our paper, usually fresh paper, to create a composition. And it's really interesting. The kids, even the kids that are confident musicians, all seem to quail at this idea. I usually get a big piece of chart paper and multiple colors, and I say, okay, these are our sounds. And I try to give them sort of a general structure. Like I might say, we can start soft, get loud. We can start loud, get soft. We can go soft, loud, soft, or we can go like small to big to small, small, big, small, big. And just someone goes like randomly says, let's start small and get big. And I'm like, great. And then with guidance, I really have to give them a lot of guidance, just asking them a lot of questions. I say, how do you want to start? What do you want to do first? We're going to start small, go big. Do we want to be quiet? Again, asking a lot of questions. I ask questions about like, where do we want to use color? Do we want to use color for how louds and soft? Do we want to use sound? So I ask a lot of questions, and then we draw sort of using these symbols what they want to create sound-wise. And it's completely done just through discussion. And this is also when I talk a lot about we're drawing it horizontally, left to right. And now, I'm going to sort of like leave space because this is going to be our next system. So I'm sort of talking about the traditions of reading music, even though we're not reading standard notation. Okay. I'm not going to write that right now, though. I'm not going to do that part unless you really need me to. Once we have created that piece of music, we play it. Different people get assigned different parts, and we play our composition. And once we've played our composition, we're not done. This is a habit I want the kids to really think about, because I really am a strong believer in using feedback and using reflective thinking to move your own learning forward. So once we finish, I ask this series of questions. And this is not a success criteria where we must have all these things. I ask the kids, have we got some contrasts in the elements of music? Like, do we have contrasts? And we go through, yes, we do. If we don't, we say, do we want them? Usually we do. Have we got a variety of different sound makers to create contrast and tone color? Yes or no? Do we want them? Have we thought about texture? Are there some thinner layers, thicker layers? Like, is there a point where there's just one sound, another point where there's lots of sounds? Is there a place where we could have a simple melody? In this case, we usually say no. We're not using a melodic instrument, so no to that. And I think it's important that we ask the question and then say no, because we want them to understand, maybe you don't want a melody. Maybe that's not what you want, and that's not right. Would a repeated pattern like an ostinato work, or maybe just a strong rhythm? And again, sometimes the kids say, yes, let's do it. And other kids say like, no, let's not do it. But this is what we want them to do, is to think about what they're creating. Have we used any repetition? I want to encourage them to do repetition, because a composition works nicely if there's repetition and variety. Does our piece have a clear beginning and a clear ending? And do we all know exactly what we have to do? A very important question. And then I ask, do we want to make any changes? And almost guaranteed they do. We don't make tons of changes, but we make changes, and then we play our revised piece again. And I think that's really important. I also think it's important because this is something that we teach them with language. Like, we teach them, you write and you revise and you make your good copy. And this is what I want them to start thinking about. Just because you've made some noises doesn't mean you're finished. We need to go back and think about what we've created. So that's like another part of this lesson.
Lisa, just before you go on, Lisa's describing our creative process in the arts, of course, as well as our critical analysis process that we have. But at OMEA, we have a poster of the creative process. So if you're interested in that, you can let Pam know. And it's something that hangs in our classrooms, and we refer to it so much of the time. Sorry to interrupt. I just thought
it's okay. No, that's perfect.
Exactly what you're working with, right?
Yes. So that's just 2 parts of this whole thing. And part 3, then we actually start talking about a soundscape. What is a soundscape? And I give them criteria. So they're divided into groups of about 4 or 5, and it's very specific criteria. Oh wait, let me refresh, because I don't think I updated it. See, there we go. It needs to be 30 seconds to a minute in length. And that seems like arbitrary numbers, but if you don't make them do at least 30 minutes, you will get 30 seconds, not minutes, 30 seconds. You will get 5 seconds and they won't understand why it's not wonderful. It needs to have a clear beginning, middle, and end. They must include vocal sounds, body percussion, which is, using your body, found sounds, which can be anything, like the newspaper was a good example of found sounds, like anything they find that they can make a noise with. I don't let the kids use any instruments, including classroom instruments, for this part. Their soundscape needs to reflect a specific location or theme. At some point in the soundscape, everyone needs to be participating at the same time. And I put that in because there's always going to be reluctant members of the group or reluctant members of the class. And by forcing them to be inclusive, it works really well. And then this part, your soundscape needs to be notated in a way that all group members can read and understand. And it can be anything. I've had students who just write a list of who does what. I've had kids that make graphic notation. I have kids that write everything out in standard notation. I have kids that do a combination. And that part doesn't matter. What I say to them is, you have to notate it so that you know what to do. And it takes more than one class. So you need to be able to come back next class and look at it and know what you have to do. So then I give them limited choices. The first time I did this, I didn't give them limited choices and I regretted it. So one is a cityscape, and I've included like a little sound button because maybe not everybody knows what a city really sounds like. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. A rainstorm, same thing. I've created a sound for that, and the beach or ocean. So I grew up on the ocean. I know what that sounds like. And if you grow up lakeshore, you probably know exactly what that sounds like. But I live in London. There's not that many kids. They all wanted to do beach and ocean, and a lot of them didn't actually know what that would sound like. They didn't know. So having those little sample bubbles gives them an idea. I usually have them get in their groups and I say, you have 1 minute to decide and I will come and find out what you're doing. And then they have a big chunk of time. Everything gets performed. So probably halfway through their creative time, we pull up the reflection questions and we stop everything and we talk about the same thing. We go through the questions, they talk with their group. I also give them a copy of this, and I encourage them at any time during their process to come back to this and talk about it so that they can think about what they're creating and is it what they want to create. They perform it. I usually record it. It's always interesting to hear it. And then they get feedback. So they basically using their criteria here, they get feedback. And this is assessment for learning. So this is not assessment that I record for myself. This is assessment for them to understand what the assessment task will really be. So they've done this, they get their feedback. And one of the things I do look at big picture is, do they actually use the feedback that they are given? Because their second project is basically the same thing. Same time frame. They must use voice, body percussion, found sounds. They have the choice to use instruments. I've included that there has to be contrast through the soundscape. So we want to bump it up just a little bit. Reflects the time and theme. Everyone has to participate. It's notated in some way. And this is the one that I assess, and this is sort of their mark on it because we've been working towards this. I give them new choices: a forest, a restaurant, an emotion which they choose. That's always interesting. One of the best ones a group did was boredom. It was very good. The digital world, something completely abstract. No one has chosen that one. And your choice. And I say with teacher approval because there was one year where 3 different groups came to me and said, can I do a soundscape of music class while we're practicing soundscapes? And I said, no, that's not a soundscape. That's reality. So same thing, we go through the same process, we do the same reflection. And this is the one that's assessed. This is the one. And again, I record it. When they are performing, I record so that I can go back and listen. So there's certain criteria which are things that I'm listening for, but when they're playing, I quickly assess, is everyone participating? Are they involved? What kinds of things do I observe? That's part of the reason I also record. I've included in the document, this is an example of a 1-point rubric. This is how I do my marking. This is an example of how I might mark the final soundscape. Are you guys familiar with 1-point rubrics, or do you use 4-point?
We usually generally 4-point, but I was just thinking how you've used those reflection questions all the way along. So there's no surprises at assessment level time.
That's right.
Right. So it's like, this is what they've been working on, and they're building that literacy of music language too. And Val said something there about, you really brought to life like that thinking aspect of the assessment. So like they're thinking through this, you can see evidence of that.
Yeah. And I mean, I try to build my assessments, especially for my upper grades too, because they're older, they're deeper thinkers, or they should be.
Yes. Yeah.
But I also don't believe in just throwing things at them and saying, good luck. I really like to say, this is where I want them to be. What do I have to do to get them there? So they all have potential to be successful. Like really, everyone should be able to get a great grade. Everyone should be able to do a good job. And it's what I've noticed is the kids that are invested, that make an effort, are the kids that do well, and the kids that are just, cruising by, they're the ones that will end up not doing as well. It really ends up becoming part of it based on effort, because everything is put there. So I use a 1-point rubric, and the reason I use a 1-point rubric to assess is simply because level 4 is going beyond expectation. And there's so many different possibilities of what that could be. So I find my struggle in the arts with a 4-point rubric is that great art, like a real true level 4, is something that I didn't expect, that I didn't tell them to do. And I found when I was using 4-point rubrics for the arts, if I said, if you do this, it is level 4, then they all do it. And then I'm like, well, you just did exactly what I said. It's not innovation. It's not creativity. It is not going beyond. And the way, basically, I just look at it, did they meet it all? Great. What did they do that went beyond? I would put it in this section. Working toward is like level 1, level 2, and it's all feedback here. This eventually gets shared with my students so they understand. Some kids get really hooked up on grades, but once I've done this a couple times, no one's saying like, did I get an A or a B or whatever? They look at this and they understand how they're doing. And I really emphasize, if you didn't, whatever it tells you to work toward, that's what you need to work towards next. Like really, feedback is huge for me. Feedback and working from feedback. This is also great for report card writing. My report card writing became so much easier once I started doing this, because I could quickly, say, Susie is able to create soundscapes using a variety of sounds, including voice, body percussion, found sounds. And then I could talk about maybe something that Susie did, which was exceptional, or I could talk about something that Susie needed to do to improve next time, which is sort of what we're working toward with report card comments. So, I mean, I do have my little core center part that's my generic chunk, but then I quickly can identify what I need to say that's specific to that student. And that's another reason, it really clarifies for me where people are in their learning.
And I think students will be able to see themselves in the learning too. Like when they read that report card comment, they're like, I know exactly what she's talking about.
That's right. That's right.
And
Yeah.
expand on that.
And by using this consistently, I find, like I said, kids really want to move forward from this. They want to start seeing everything improving. And I find if you just give them their mark or their grade, they're like, I got a 73, yay. But with this, I find the mark component is taken out of it. I teach at a school that's really a school with like high grades. It's got a really amazing reputation, really a lot of support for education. Kids are very mark oriented, and they still are, but I find when I'm focusing on feedback, the kids are focused on their learning rather than on the grade. I think it makes a big difference. Okay, so that is Soundscape, and this has, like, you can print off the reflection sheet. I've sort of tapped into what expectations this meets, and it's all there. It's all there.
So could you show us those visual examples that you had at the start of the Soundscape? Now that we've gone through it, now that imagery of the colors and the lines,
Yeah.
I think it will make more sense to me now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like even this, which I kind of jumped over, this is the part where I say to kids, like, what sound would you make for that? Pam, what sound would you make for that?
I'd be like, it's a slash move.
No, don't talk, make a sound. No, with your voice. This is voice, no paper.
Oh, no paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woo!
There you go. And kids have different ways they'd interpret it. And the only time I kind of come down on them if I'm like, if they go like, ooh, and I say, what, is it going down? Come on. So this becomes quite fascinating. And even reluctant kids, once we get into this, because no one is really wrong. That's the other thing. A lot of kids feel very inhibited with creativity because they worry that they are doing it wrong. And that's the piece that they're missing, that they're not. So here's the graphic score. And yes, when kids see that, they're just kind of like, what is this? And you have to, I mean, Pam, how you felt when you said you couldn't, like, I kind of didn't spend a lot of time on it, but we spend a lot of time on this because I asked kids, what do you think pieces mean? What do you think? Talk to your neighbor. What do you think things mean? And then just ask, and no wrong answers. Like, again, the kids say like anything. So, I mean, you could say anything. You could interpret it any way you want. The goal of this piece, though, is one, so that they familiarize themselves with the concept of a graphic score and what it could look like. And they start to investigate what it could like. I actually don't tell them what anything means on this. I also want them to come to the conclusion that they don't know what it means because there's no key. Those are those two pieces. And it's amazing what the kids see and how they interpret it. And it's also amazing. And when you actually show them the key, I know it's very tiny, and usually I end up blowing it up and doing it larger. Some of them get quite indignant about what the choices were that were made in creating this score.
But even like, I can see repetition there. When I looked at it, I couldn't see it, but now I can see where there's been repetition. And
I mean, I really skipped over this, Pam, but that comes out when we have the discussion with the kids. They recognize the repetition. They see how there's different shapes. They see how there's different colors. They see how things are placed on different levels. They see how there's these strips across. And they see all those things. And I like to spend a lot of time on this piece because I think this discovery moment is really important for the kids, where they're interpreting what they see and they're thinking about what they see. And then they hear other people's ideas. It's often someone says, I think this is this. And someone will say, I totally disagree. I think this is this. So this, I mean, the things that I guess the things that I rushed over, the things that I normally spend a lot of time doing.
No, but like, I kind of understood it. And then you took us through that. And I'm like, I think I know what it is. I needed to go back and just say like, I'm getting it.
Yeah. And I think with Soundscapes, so all of this came out of a workshop I did at Western a couple of years ago. They used to, and I hope when the pandemic's over, they do it again, where they have a special music education guest come to the Western music faculty that talks to their students, but then on the Saturday they have teacher workshops, and I one that was about creativity, and it was all about soundscape, and it blew my mind. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and if people end up doing soundscape and really loving it, there's so much more you can do with it that really taps into a lot of creativity and into music literacy. It's something that a lot of people get intimidated by standard notation and reading music, because that's a big part of what we do traditionally, but using graphic notation and soundscapes are a great way to access musical creativity. Hi, Jane.
And just looking at this score, I
Sorry.
noticed right away, it's almost like retrograde here, right? Forwards and backwards. And that is really exciting for kids start to, say, what other subjects do you do this kind of thing with patterns, and they come up with it. But I have to agree with Lisa, this doing soundscapes outside as well, anywhere, really exciting for kids. And I love the process that she has. I think that makes a huge difference.
Thanks. I have one more thing I'm going to share. I know we're running out of time, aren't we? I'm so sorry. I have one more thing to share, which is a very small thing. Directed to non-directed. Nope, I got it backwards. It's non-directed to directed listening. I have it backwards, and I'll fix that title. So it's non-directed to directed listening. So several years ago, I taught at a very small country school. I was the music specialist, and eventually, because we had less and less music time, I became a classroom teacher, but I would often trade off subjects to teach music. And there was one year that there was a grade 7 teacher new to the school, and there was no way I could switch anything off with him. And he was very uncomfortable with music, didn't know what to do, had to teach his own. And we sort of came up with this idea based on a few other things that I had done. And it actually ticks a lot of boxes. So if there's a classroom teacher who is thinking, like, how can I keep the music going? This is kind of a little tiny, like 5 to 10 minute daily thing you can do that can really build a great foundation for music within your classroom. So non-directed listening is when you listen to music and you're not listening for anything, you're just listening. And directed listening is when you're told, listen for this. This is what I want you to specifically listen for. So the idea of the non-directed to directed listening quite simply is one piece of music that you play every day, and you start by just listening, and then during the week you ask the children to listen for specific things. That's it. There are a couple resources out there. This started because our school had this thing called the Bromett Taylor non-directed listening program, which is huge. It's expensive and it's just about listening. But I started using that as this. And there's a couple places that do it, do non-directed listening. There's a teacher on Teachers Play Teachers who has some listening things. So what I chose to do is I chose this free listening unit this person has, Corey Bloom, and it's a directed listening. I actually think this is the easier way to do it, where she says, here are some questions you can ask, but I've set it up so it can start non-directed. So usually with non-directed, you read a little script, and then you listen to the music, and you give the kids information each time. So this is from Corey Bloom's bird listening unit, and she gives you sort of 3 different songs and questions. So in your first week, you listen to the Beatles' Blackbird, and you can listen to it on YouTube. If you don't own your own copy, it's so accessible. So you just read the script. This week's listening selection is Blackbird by the Beatles. The Beatles were a British rock band formed in the 1960s. The members were John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr. They most certainly grew up hearing blackbirds in their home in Liverpool. Blackbirds are common to the gardens and throughout the countryside in Great Britain. Play the song. So that's how you start. During non-directed listening, it's really important that the kids are not doing other things. They're not reading books, they're not writing, they're not drawing. It's you sit and listen. The only sort of compromise I ever made was with a grade 3 and 4 class, that they could eat their snack while they listened, but just that's all they're doing. Day 2, another little bit of information, and I just went online and found this information about the origins of Blackbird. Again, reading it, and it's actually about racial unrest in the 1960s, the civil rights movement. That's what the song is really about. Day 3, I decided to take one of Corey Bloom's questions. So this is when the kids would write a response. So I read about the song, and I say at the end, as you listen to Blackbird, name one instrument you hear. There's only 3 things in this song: a guitar, a voice, and a foot tapping. So the kids, you can do it like a little worksheet. You can have it as a journal, whatever works for the teachers. They just need to write like, I hear a guitar. So that taps into, that's one of the expectations, that they can identify certain things. I have that all listed at the top. Day 4, here's my next question. I read my little script and I say, I talk about how it's often covered. If you were to write a remix of this song, what parts would you keep? What would you add? So then they're kind of thinking about the piece, doing a little analysis, giving a little personal response. Again, that's an expectation. And the last one is usually a more personal response. Think about a time in your life when you were able to overcome a tough situation and fly free. Keep this in mind as you write a response to this song. So you kind of go from like really sort of simple questions like, what do you hear? What do you think this is? To what is your opinion? What do you think about this? How are you inspired in your writing? So she has Blackbird, The Lark Ascending, which is a classical piece by Ray Fung Williams, and Rockin' Robin by the Jackson 5. So all I did was take the questions that she had and I made this little script. Now, if you're a more experienced musician, and you can, you listen to the music and you're like, I know what questions I would ask them, then this link here from Burnaby School District, they actually have 3 programs of non-directed listening where they give you the song with the script and you just have to find the music. And if you are comfortable like making up your own questions, or you can actually take some of the script where they say, sometimes in the script they'll say, you probably can hear this instrument. So instead you could turn that to the question, what instrument do you hear? And you can sort of use the information. For assessing this, I would not assess this every single day in the sense of marking their books all the time or whatever. There's sort of 2 ways. You could sort of do it generally, you can do it generally. This is actually the way I'd probably end up doing it. I have a 1, 2, and 3 because there are 3 weeks, 3 songs. So they give a personal response to the music. Check mark, check mark, check mark. They did it in the first, like Blackbird, Lark Ascending, and Rockin' Robin. Or maybe if I don't put a check mark there, I'm going to put a comment in Going Beyond or Working Toward, and then analyzes ways in which the elements are used. So I'm not really pinpointing unless there's something, on either end of that spectrum that I want to comment on. I can just check they've met that expectation. Or if I want to be really specific, I can do it for the specific song. But yeah, if I saw my students more frequently, my music classes, I see them once a week. Last year, I saw my music classes every other day, and we did a lot of this kind of thing where we'd do 3 days, where the first day we just listen, second day we'd ask a very specific question, and the third day we give a personal response. So, but this year I'm not able to use this approach at all. So yes, there you go. And then, of course, we have lots of resources at the OMEA website. I've listed more from the AgaCon resources, which I thought were wonderful. There's a symmetry and asymmetry one, which, again, taps into soundscape composition. And the design in music and culture uses the form of rondo, which is another really accessible form for kids. So there we go.
So great. So just to refresh everyone's memory about the resource. So this is what you'll be sharing with us, the PDF and all the actionable links and everything like that.
Yep. Those should click. Like when I click them, they work. So
yes,
hopefully it'll
just make sure you share with anybody with the link has it,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. But no, that's such a gift for us to have that whole process. And honestly, like that 1 point rubric piece, I wasn't thinking about it in the arts, and you made me, I loved how you said like the level 4 is like, you have to be innovative and creative. And we do have a lot of students that respond by like, just tell me what to do to get.
Yeah.
Before. And this kind of like, you be the creative one. And Jane, you had some images there, those graphics that you were holding up.
Yeah.
From the curriculum document.
Yeah. That's from our curriculum document. But I was going to pile on to that as well. Students even know in the class when something is a level 4. They hear it in music. That has been my experience. Where they'll go, wow.
Yeah.
And the thing I've always found is it has not necessarily been the child who comes to school with the most musical background. It's often someone who just is musical, and they've never had maybe the same opportunities. And that happened to me so many times, where children who didn't maybe shine in other areas of the music, in this kind of thing like the soundscapes, all of a sudden, or in their answers, everybody would go, whoa, how did you know that? I found it was a really great community builder with my classes.
I just have to say something about 1 point rubric, because I know there's going to be some classroom teachers watching this. I actually started using this as a classroom teacher, and I assessed every subject I taught using a 1 point rubric, including math. And I found it was so amazing at clarifying really who was level 4 and really who was struggling and really who was meeting criteria. So I use it for the arts because I think it really fits the brief of the arts, like innovation and creativity. But level 4 in math is about being innovative and creative and thinking outside of expectation.
And what you need to, what are the criteria? Like that's the extent, it makes you how you built that through that assessment 4, where, we're responding to it, and that becomes the criteria you judge against. So that we can develop with kids. Like you might start with 2 or 3 criteria, but as you work on it, tell you like, this is what we need to do to be successful. Let's add that there.
And I know you guys are using continuum. That's a focus in your assessment, continuum. And this also developed out of my own interest in continuum. I love continuum. I love working with continuum because I think you always need to know where you're going.
Yes.
You can't just be like, you got it, the end. It's like, this is where you are, and now next, how can we move forward? But I also think it recognizes when someone has really hit a mark, like really, really hit a mark. But
So the last little piece we have here, if anybody has questions for Jane and Lisa, we can keep sharing ideas. I know Jane's got a point there to make. So, but if you have questions, you can throw them in the chat or come on, speak with us. Go right ahead. And if you feel you have to step away because lots of bellies are grumbling in the household, that's fine too, knowing that the session is recorded and you'll be able to finish off with us. But Jane, what were you going to add to the group?
It reminded me about the curriculum that we showed you about the fundamental concepts of the curriculum, that there are times we have to find out, and teachers need to know, where are my students coming from and where are they going? But that where are they coming from, we have to reach back sometimes when something just like a pandemic hit and they didn't get to complete some of the expectations from the year before. So it's a great thing to think about, that sometimes we're reaching back and then moving forward maybe more quickly, but it's that same concept is really reassuring, I think, sometimes to teachers, where you can't just take it from, this is what I teach in grade 5. We need to think about that.
Yes.
Where are we continuing? And there have been classes that I have taken much further than the expectations of the curriculum, what the fundamental concepts were. And there were other classes that struggled and didn't maybe go as far. So that's part of it.
Using the curriculum to find out, what that criteria is will be helpful too, right? To go in there and look at those examples and use the language of the curriculum.
Yes,
Mhm.
and the fundamental concepts in music are the what.
Mhm.
That's really what we're required. And then
Yeah.
all those expectations, particularly specific ones, are just suggestions. And there are lots of those kind of questions that Lisa was mentioning. Lots of
Mhm.
those kind of reflection and questions are there in the teacher prompts.
Mhm.
And sometimes my students at Brock, they get all caught up with what to ask. I say, well, go in the curriculum and
Yeah.
look, and it's a place to start. It will
Mhm.
give you some of the ideas, like for the non-directed listening and so on. So
Yeah, I was thinking about that non-directed listening too. Kids always want to share their own music. If you practice those enough times, like if a student says, well, I'm going to bring my song, and then we're going to go through that whole process
Yeah.
and write the little quips and
That's right. You can develop into, and it could be an amazing thing to assess how well they're understanding what's happening, because they have to ask the question that the kids have to answer. So they actually
yes.
have to know what they're listening to and what they're hearing. But it gives the kids a lot of voice in what's done. So even if you
Mhm.
use, a few songs to develop, this is the routine, this is how it's done, and then open the floor to the kids who are interested, or open the floor as like, this is a project, now it's up to you. I know playlists were really popular when we were remote, like developing
Mhm.
playlists. A lot of music teachers felt that that was a great way for giving kids voice. I love it too, but at the same time, what is the purpose? Like, often with my music, my question is always, what is the purpose of it? Like, is the purpose to just enjoy sharing? There's, again, nothing wrong with that. Or is
Yeah.
there a different purpose? And from my point of view as a music educator within the school, I want to be as purposeful as possible with my choices so that I can see my kids moving forward. So if I want them to create a playlist, what is my pedagogical purpose? Like, why
Yes.
am I asking them to do that? I think one of the nice things, if you're a classroom teacher and you do something like that, you can tap into your literacy or your media, or anything like that, to sort of make it a little richer experience.
Mhm.
or or combine with the grade 8 homeroom teacher and the
Yes.
music teacher, and that's so powerful for kids to see us
Mhm.
working together. That's how the
Yes.
Mhm.
world works, and so it's another great opportunity for them.
That's right. I'm just embarking on a project right now with one of our grade 7, 8 teachers, where we're doing movie music, which there was a lot of buzz online about, let's do movie music. And my
Yeah.
question was like, what are we doing with it? Are we just listening? What are we doing?
Mhm.
But from my point of view, we're listening, we're understanding how it's put together, but then they're going to create a leitmotif, little theme for a character. And he just finished a novel study. So he and I are working together for his media studies and literacy, where they do certain things, like they have to choose a character, they have to do a character profile, they have to create a leitmotif to reflect that character. So they're tapping into that. They create a poster, and our big goal, if we get to it, is they make a movie trailer that includes the leitmotif. So I mean, that's a big
Yeah.
project. I wouldn't be able to do that. But I
No.
mean, I walked into the class and I said, who remembers what a leitmotif was? And every hand went up, and I was like, he must have spoken to them about it. He must have, because their response was so enthusiastic and energetic.
Oh,
So
that's
that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference that it becomes more than just, I drop in for 40 minutes and I'm talking about something random. It's really becoming embedded in their learning.
Amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if you've read the comments, but people are very pleased with what you share with us today. And I love that you reboot from my tired teacher brain. I love that.
reboot. That's sweet.
Well, if anyone has questions about the things that we've talked about, you're welcome to email me at OMEA, but I'm
Mhm.
often in those Facebook groups, the potluck, and there's a lot of conversations that happen through the Facebook group.
Yes.
A lot of creative ideas, and in fact, I just joined a collaborative group on the side with this young woman who said, let's get a bunch of people together and do something. And we're like, okay. I don't know what we're doing yet, but there's a lot of opportunity for
Mhm.
creativity and coming up with ideas and sharing, and it's a very exciting environment.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm so pleased we were able to connect and bring you to Lambton, Kent virtually. Maybe we'll actually meet in November in Niagara Falls. Wouldn't that be a
Niagara
lovely dream?
It would be nice.
Doing that. But I'm sure we'll stay connected, and we'll be sharing this out to our teachers through our blog, and I'll be joining that Facebook group too as well. So thank
Wonderful.
you for sharing your experiences in the classroom, the importance of how an association can help us with get better at our craft, and just really appreciate your giving nature.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you. And thank you from OMAA. We really appreciate being able to come into Lambton, Kent. Great place to be, great
Yeah.
place to be from. So,
Yes.
and our president is also, she's from Sarnia, I'm from Blenheim. But it's just been wonderful to see the enthusiasm and creativity.
Yeah.
And thank you, Pam, for putting this together. And your superintendent,
Yep.
who reached out to us first.
Yeah,
And
he
we
found
were
he
so-
found the 2 gold nuggets there.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
wonderful, and we are so appreciative. And literally, our email, Pam has them. We are
Mhm.
happy to help in any way, or come when we can be face to face and do something.
Yes, exactly. And so I'm really excited about next week. We'll be looking to have LKDSB educators share their reflections, and I know, like, when we were planning and talking already, like, we had some similar themes about using picture books and soundscapes, and so it's just really nice to know that they've got things going on in their classrooms that they're going to be able to share. And we were looking to connect with the other arts too. So you've given us a really good, exciting start to all that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you for
been
having us.
wonderful.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you.
Lisa.
I'm going to
Thank
listen
you
to
for
some
inviting me.
Beatles tonight, I think.
Yeah.